Hello, my name is Sharon Homan James, Alumni Engagement Officer at Heriot-Watt, and I am delighted to welcome you to this first of 3 Future Ready events being held over the next academic year. The session will be led by Sarah Innes, our Specialist Graduate Careers Consultant from our UK campus, and we are joined by some of our alumni who shall be sharing their insights. There will be a Q&A session at the end. Please do put your questions in the chat as you think of them. But for now, I'm going to leave you in Sarah's capable hands.
Thanks so much, Sharon, for the intro. We're going to get started very soon with our panel today. So just some very quick introductions. My name's Sarah. As Sharon mentioned, I'm the Graduate Careers Consultant based here at the Edinburgh campus. So I'm going to be hosting today. We're actually absolutely delighted that so many people have been interested in the Future Ready series, and we've had over 100 people sign up for today to either attend in person or to access the recording afterwards. Just to let you know, the idea for this series really came up from a sort of desire to support our graduates as they move from the university world into the sort of professional world of work. We know we've got an amazing resource of Heriot-Watt alumni that we could draw on to come back and share their experiences as part of this series. It can feel like a massive transition, moving from the sort of structured and relatively predictable world of university into a sort of professional environment. And we really wanted to ensure that our graduates feel confident and excited by the challenge. So today's focus is very much on how to sort of confidently make that change, how to get yourself securely established, and how to thrive in the workplace. So as I've mentioned, to do this, we'll be drawing on the expertise and wisdom of 4 recent alumni. And we're very grateful to them for coming along and talking about their experiences. We'll start in a moment with some introductions. Following introductions, we're going to start to dig a little bit deeper into the experiences that our alumni have had. We're going to hear about some of the challenges they faced and some of the advice that they can pass on to you, most importantly. Following the discussion, we will move on to some questions. We are really keen to make this interactive, so please put your questions into the chat. Let us know all the things that you are dying to ask them. So without further ado, we're going to turn our attention to the panel. I think we'll go through the list one by one. You can see the names of our panel members, but I'm going to let them do the introductions today. So perhaps we can start with you, Candide. Are you happy to go first?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Candide. I've graduated with a master in supply chain management and logistics. I was based in Edinburgh, and after graduating, I started a role as a sourcing associate, and now I'm a supply chain graduate at Boeing. And that's my introduction.
Thanks, Candide. That's great. Joy, you're next on my screen, looking on at it. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. It's really nice to meet you guys. Thanks for making the time to attend this session and kind of hear from us. I'm graduated from the Malaysian campus in Heriot-Watt University, and I took a Master's in Arts in Business and Finance degree. Currently, I'm working as a consulting analyst in a consulting firm called WTW, where I mainly touch on organizational restructuring, M&A, as well as executive compensation projects.
Thank you, Joy. We look forward to hearing more about that. Chris, you're next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria, but commonly known as Chris. I completed my Bachelor of Science in Computer Science at Heriot-Watt University, Dubai. My career journey started in January 2025, where I accepted a full-time offer as a junior software developer at Alba Cars. There, we mostly focus at automating workflows and decreasing manual work using automations. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. And finally, Oscar.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you all too. Thanks for coming today. Yeah, I graduated from Heriot-Watt with a bachelor's in science and psychology in 2022, and I've been kind of hanging around Heriot-Watt still. I'm a research and teaching assistant, so I kind of I do some research in psychology and business, and I'm doing teaching in psychology now too. So, academia mostly just now too. So, yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that. So hopefully you have an idea of some of the background of our graduates here. All campuses are represented. What we'd like to start with today is just thinking about that moment where you are sort of anticipating moving into a new role. And I just wonder, sort of prior, you've secured the job, so you've been successful in that process. But prior to actually starting, there's a gap between accepting the job and then realizing, oh, actually, I actually have to start and make this happen. I'd really love to hear some of your experiences about sort of what you did in preparation before starting your new job. Chris, would you mind starting on that one?
Well, for me, preparations came in very different ways. Obviously, I'd have to mentally prepare myself for starting a job, transitioning from student to an employee. A lot of the things I did, especially during my job hunt, I'd say, was updating my CV and job profiles, even job environment, because I wanted to be able to represent myself in the way that and show people how I wanted to be seen. So if anyone at work, especially, would be because when I entered the work environment, everyone's looking at my LinkedIn. It's like, oh, this is a student from here and here. So updating my job profiles for sure. I think on the weekend before my first day, I had gone on a camping trip with my friends just to mentally prepare myself. I think it was really good to surround myself with people who understood, especially those because who were once starting their first day at work. So it was good to connect with others and get their perspectives. This is a little silly on my end, but I think because my job is in person, especially, I go to the office every day. I did look at my wardrobe and think, okay, how do I want to represent myself and my style? So just making sure I had the right clothes. And another thing I'd say is this is probably one of the most important was if you're getting sponsored by your job, then you want to know that you have all the visas in place and what your onboarding process would be, especially before your first day, because you don't want to be spending your first day just going, oh, I don't know if I should be doing this or if I should be going there or who I should be meeting. So I was very in contact. I was in a lot of contact with my boss over the weekend, especially because I wanted to be able to go through my first day with confidence. Yeah, and then most of that was just real on like tech knowledge and what I'd be handling. They did give me a list of softwares I'd be using, so I had a lot of time to prepare, like, and to give myself a head start before my first day.
Well, thanks, Chris. I mean, it sounds really, really comprehensive, and it sounds like actually would you say you were quite organized in getting all of those set up? I'm particularly interested around you talked about having that communication with your manager and so being organized in reaching out to them. Do you feel that sort of helped you when you went into work?
100% that helped. Yeah, 100%. I think my manager was very supportive, especially because I was coming in. I was only 21. I was very young, so was very worried about being so young in the workplace, especially. Um, I think just asking all of the questions that you can. There's no harm in asking questions. Everyone will always be willing to help you. So you shouldn't be afraid, especially to ask the questions that you think are silly, even if they aren't. So I just asked everything that I could, especially just to make sure that we were engaged as well. That when I came in on my first day, this is what we would be expected to do. Yeah.
Thanks very much for that, Chris. So in your experience, it sounds as though you're actually sort of staying fairly local for your job. So but you still did a lot of preparation in advance of that. Some of our graduates will be moving. They might be moving town or city, to start a new job. And I know, Candide, I know you had that experience. I was wondering if you'd be happy to sort of speak to that a little bit for us.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. Would say that I agree with Chris about the fact that you should clean your LinkedIn, update it, and say where you're currently working and put the latest in the About section, and getting in touch with your line manager via email and even requesting a quick catch up before starting, and also asking about the dress code in the company. As to moving, I think I kind of qualify for this question. I moved around the UK 5 times now, so I would say I'm a pro by now at moving. So if you are moving between two cities, one in Scotland and especially the other one in England, I would say prepare well. By that I mean financially prepare to have a deposit for a new flat, prepare to have 1 month's rent in advance, and also request from your HR department what type of support is available, and see what type of support you can get from your current organization, and try to build the gap between what you need and how they can support you. Uh, with moving, I would say at least give yourself a year to adapt to your new city. And it took me that long to know where are the good cafes, to know where to go for groceries or just to feel comfortable. I would also say get into the routine in your new city. Try to do like a dummy commute. Just pretend you're going to work and see just for you to know what are the barriers, just to know what bus to get or what route to get, and even alternative routes to get there. And I would say that first impression lasts a long time. So do ask about the dress code for it. So I would say budget and get in touch with your HR and your line manager.
I mean, I think that's between you, Chris and Candy, that's a fantastic list of advice, and I almost feel like I need to put together a to-do list now and get it up on Target Connect for people to see, because it sounds as though that will really kind of take the pressure off for that first day at work, when you actually sort of turn up at your place of work, and you do feel like everything else is sort of under control, and there's bound to be a few nerves on that first day at work. Joy, I was wondering if I can turn to you. I was wondering if you've got any advice for anyone who's sort of feeling nervous about that first day, and even the first week at work.
Yeah, I think definitely building upon Candidate's and Chris's point of, I mean, first few days definitely going to be a bit overwhelming, totally different new environment, new people, and people you're going to be working with that's not around your age. So I think it's definitely very normal to be nervous. I think all of us here were kind of half excited to see what was going on, half nervous as well. I think for me, one thing that really helped is that kind of remembering that no one really needs to have it all together. And as a fresh grad, really going into the workplace, no one expects you to know everything. It is going to be a learning curve. So I think actually going in with that mindset of not feeling pressured on that definitely helped me. I think a few things that kind of helped me calm my nerves while I was in maybe the first week or two in work is definitely trying to meet as many people as possible. Because personally, I feel that something that could help is you only would feel nervous because it's unfamiliar. And to build that sort of familiarity, you have to do it over and over again. And that feeling will slowly kind of fade away. So I think setting up introductions with people who you're going to work with, your team, your managers, that really, really helps sort of calm the nerves a little bit, because once you get a bit comfortable, the feeling fades away a bit. Yeah. I think making time to be a bit more proactive, maybe grab a coffee with somebody, and when you see a friendly face at work after that 15-minute, 20-minute conversation, going into work doesn't seem so daunting anymore. You slowly become more familiar with it. That's definitely one thing that has helped me. I think another thing is to kind of feel a bit more prepared going into it. I would actually keep a project or a task tracker, or even a checklist just so you have ease of mind going into it. You don't forget anything. So what I did was I made a checklist on Excel. I'm an Excel nerd, so on Excel, and before I went in, I kind of crossed it out, making sure everything I had was there. So it's out of mind, out of sight. You go in feeling prepared. And that really helps to calm the nerves in that aspect. Tracking that down. That's probably another tip I would have. But a bit more unconventional is definitely dress well. When you feel good, when you look good, you feel good. And, people can actually really tell when you go into a room for that. And, dress how you want to be perceived, as Chris points as well. And that really helped because when you feel confident in maybe just one aspect out of everything new, I think that really would help in that way. And another thing is also do your research on the company, especially on what ask around, right? What are you going to be doing? Who are you going to be working with? And then make the steps to actually connect with them. And like I mentioned, a lot of people go in thinking that a bit, or the nerves probably build and thinking, oh, I probably need to know a lot of things. I need to present myself a certain way. And honestly, it is more tiring to pretend than it is going to be yourself. And like I mentioned earlier, really, they don't expect you to know everything. But I think having taken out some time to do some research really helps, because you should know something to have the initial conversations with people. So yeah, I think around these 3 to 4 things really did help me calm my nerves in that sense and feel a bit more prepared in my first few weeks.
And it sounds, Joy, as a really important part of that sort of feeling prepared and settling in early on, and also I suppose discovering about the organisation that you're working for is about making those connections at work. And I'm kind of interested to hear from you and from anybody else about the sort of practicalities of making those connections, because it can be daunting to reach out to people who are essentially strangers. Have you got any tips on how you might be able to do that in a sort of practical way?
I think for me, I would actually use the fact that you're new as sort of a get out of jail card. So ask all the stupid questions. Nobody's going to be judgmental of you for not knowing it, because I'm new, right? I sort of abused that my first month or two in my job, because I realized, it's normal for you not to know, everything about the company. It's normal for you to be curious, and no question is ever really stupid. Most of the time, a lot of people are really, really helpful. They want to talk about, things that they're passionate in. So I think really leaning into that would really help you start those initial conversations and, see more friendly faces at work, feel a bit more at home. But definitely use the get out of jail card. You only have it for like the first 2 or 3 months. I would say so.
Does anyone have anything to add on that? I mean, that's a great tip. I think people like talking about their jobs, and they also feel very, very well very kind of sympathetic to somebody who's new. Oscar, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, it's a really, really good point Joy made about using that get out of jail free card. I definitely did that. I mean, in my current job at Heriot-Watt, I kind of knew the line manager already, so it's not a great example there. But I worked in a charity called Pastoral before, where I was completely new with new people. I mean, on the practicality sense, in a way, kind of like I was fortunate because it was a charity, so people were quite friendly. But I kept it kind of simple. I just said, like I think I put a message. I think we had a Slack channel basically with all the team members, and I put a message out saying, "Hi everyone, my name's Oscar. I'm new to the organization. I'm here for X amount of time. I'm just really keen to meet people, learn about what you do, and I think what I also said was, is there any ways that I can help?" And I think people found that quite interesting because it wasn't on the one hand, most people reached out to actually talk, but people also came up with like interesting projects and stuff too, that were that I could try and help out on. I didn't get through loads, but I did do a couple of different pieces from that. But it's a really interesting way to just just like putting it out, "Hi, I'm new. Do you want to meet and have like a cup of tea or a coffee in the office?" for like 20, 30 minutes, you know? And I think anyway, because it was my first month or two, they were quite flexible. My line manager was, yeah, meet people, you know? But I don't know. I mean, I think people can be friendly, you know? If you reach out and you just see someone, oh, hi, you know, nice to meet you, you know, do you want to grab a coffee or what do you do? And I find that really helpful because when you're then in the office, you start to build friendships and stuff and with your team. So, I guess I found keeping it easy, keeping it kind of simple, just meeting people and then also offering if there's ways that you can help with their projects or their teams, because I think people also find that as an interesting way to get to know like what you're good at and what you like to do as well too. So that's something which I certainly found helpful. So.
Mm-hmm. And it does sound as though there's something there about the sort of the culture, the organizational, you know, the sort of level of friendliness and you know, a certain amount of kind of gauging it when you start to see what might work as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I suppose by kind of putting a message out there, you kind of, or I found I got to meet the people who were friendly anyway, and it wasn't necessarily yeah, I didn't meet everyone. I met some people. So some people wanted to reach out, some people didn't. I mean, I'd imagine, yeah, if you work for a massive 5,000 person organization, it's a different story. You probably can't do that in the same way. But perhaps in your team or something like that is a place to start. Or even in the office, you know, the same thing applies. Yeah, I imagine people are friendly, even if perhaps the whole organization isn't built around that in the same way. So yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Oscar. Candide, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I would say that even in bigger organization, Oscar strategies works because as I'm a rotational graduate, I rotate team every 6 months, and sometimes you're thrown into emails and people are asking you stuff, and just say, "Hi, I'm new, willing to help. Just can we have 5 minutes and you can let me know how we can sort this?" And it goes a long way rather than just ignoring the problem or putting it to your manager. Even just shouting that you're just saying via email, "I'm new, willing to help, let's just put 5 minutes," it works a lot better. So totally agree with Oscar and Choi on this.
I think there can be something quite sort of daunting when you're new in, and I think that's a really lovely tip about asking how you can help and recognizing that actually, you know, you do really have something to offer and people want to include you. So I think, you know, we're going to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome in a little while about that kind of idea of, you know, what you're able to do in the organization. But it also touches on the whole area of sort of organizational culture and you know, sort of working out how things work in an organization. So, you know, how's this organization different to other places I might have been? And certainly different, you know, it could be very different to being at university where you're used to the structures, the systems, the relationship management and so on. Chris, I wondered if you could sort of tell us a bit about your experience in terms of culture being different at work, and any surprises that you faced when you moved into the workplace. Perhaps I can draw on you. Thank you.
I'd say there was a huge difference. I mean, at university, I was very community driven. I did a lot of club work, so I was more of a leader there. And then when I entered the workplace, I ended up having to become more of a follower, following what my manager did, what was expected of me. And I would say maybe the pressure in a work environment is not as intense as university. I think for me, especially when I felt because university was very high achieving, so I'd really want all the best grades. But then there's more leeway to make mistakes, and for me at least at the work environment, it's more understanding where it's like you get to learn along with your mistakes. Whereas that if in university where if you made mistakes, it's a bit more, well, no, how is this gonna affect my grade? How is this gonna affect how the next course? How is this gonna affect this? It's There's a lot more teamwork, especially in the work environment, especially. So I don't it's as well as that helps with less pressure on yourself. I don't think you have to worry so much about what you're doing individually, but how you can work collaboratively in a team as well. Um, Another difference I found, I'd say, just how people treat you. Like obviously there's a more professional aspect to working and going into a job environment than you are at university. At university, it felt very like a big community, a lot of friends you get to meet, and there's a lot of time to relax. But then this is really just you're an adult now. This is what you've been prepping for your entire life, you could say. So I would say there's less pressure, but now you feel like you're stepping into things that you want to do, you could say. So you feel a little bit more independent in yourself, a little bit, you need to have trust in yourself and you do grow your own confidence, I'd say, especially with the difference in culture. Um, there's not much I think else. I think I conduct myself the same throughout university and in the workplace. It's just a lot of different people. And I'd say when you're in university, you and your classmates are going at the same level at the same time. But then when you enter into a workplace, you're entering as a new person, and then everyone else is at this different level. So you have to understand what your place is in this company and how you want to grow as well with these people who have already grown. So I think a lot of that also comes up with your fellow colleagues and my manager. My manager is very supportive in my own growth. So if there's something that I feel like is stunting my growth, then I would be able to communicate. I think there's also a big part of it is that you need to understand how the communication works in the workplace. Whereas in university, you have someone assigned to you or you can go to at all times. But then in the workplace, it's a little different because there's like a hierarchy of managers and an employee. So
And it sounds, I just wanted to follow up, Chris, because it sounds as though that relationship with your manager is very important in terms of, you feel secure to make mistakes, to get things wrong,
yeah,
to try again. Yeah, how did you get that established? Was that something that was driven by them or something that was driven by you?
something that was driven by them. I'd say I got very lucky with my first manager. He's very willing to accept someone that's there to learn. He was looking for someone who wanted to grow in that position rather than someone who already knew everything, so that he could, with the company, help someone learn how the company works as the company is growing. And he wanted to be able to mentor someone in the way that if they made mistakes, he would understand how to go around teaching what went wrong, how they would address it. And I think just my manager itself is very supportive. So I think that's a good thing that's in this workplace is everyone else is also as supportive.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it can be, it's really wonderful to hear. Sometimes it's not straightforward, and sometimes we're also dealing with sort of issues around communication. And I'm thinking, one of the things that I often hear from graduates is around sort of things like remote working and the difficulties of maintaining good communication. I was wondering if any of you have had that sort of experience and needed to overcome that. Candide, you're nodding there for me.
Yes, so I would say with communication, you have to be mindful when you email someone, um, and mindful when you send an instant message via Teams. So I would say in an emails, always be polite, concise, straight to the point, and put into CC either your colleague who you work with directly, like this they can see who you're emailing, or your manager at some point when you're not getting a response. And via IM, I would avoid using capital letters. I would put a smiley when it's a request. I would, in the UK in general, because I also learned to do that, you always ask people how they are before you ask for something. So try to see the style of the person that you're facing. Just always say morning, name, how are you? I was wondering if you had time for this. And if you want an official response, just always ask via email. And that's it for my side on the communication.
Yeah, no, it's a good point about sort of cultural norms, I think, in terms of how people like to be addressed and getting used to that. Joy, did you have your hand up there?
Yeah, I just really wanted to add on what Candid shared as well. I think structuring your communication style to the other person's preferences definitely plays a big deal. At least for me, in terms of the nature of my job, we actually really work with high top senior level management, so like C-suites of companies, etc. And I think if you were ever in that situation, most of the time, I would actually, it would be a bit contrasting to what Candid has shared because they want you to get straight to the point. Um, Most of the time, this small talk and, they just rather you tell them what you need immediately. So I think really tailoring your communication style will definitely help you in that aspect. And I think in terms of working, working from home, going to the office, maybe working with different teams that work in different countries. I think everybody is quite open to, I would say, catching up on teams. But definitely you want to build initial rapport, especially among the working level. Yeah, be nice, ask them how their day was, etc. But just wanted to add the point where usually when you speak to more senior management, senior executives, I think I would actually advise not to do that. That's something I learned over the few months as well working. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think it's such a good point around sort of seniority, but also I think intercultural relationships. We all kind of work in a very global environment now, so we could be talking to colleagues in different places, and working out the organisational norms, I think, around this can take a little while. So I think it's quite important to be sort of quite kind to yourself as you pick up the norms for your organisation, but also how the seniority works and so on. We were also you're also touching a bit there on Joy on oh, where was I going? On the sort of the management relationship as well, and kind of getting to know colleagues and how things work. Was there anything else that kind of it took a little while to get used to, or is there any other experiences that you've had where you've had to sort of learn how the organisation works? I'm thinking of things like sort of remote working and patterns and norms and what's acceptable and so on, or was it all made quite clear? Candide.
I would say it's not always clear. When I join a team, I would always ask what does the hybrid look like? What days are you in the office? When can we meet? And what days are you online? And I would adapt my days in the office to match their days, and remote working to have the same days remotely working. But that's how I adapted my hybrid working style, and always ask for the SharePoint. If there isn't one, create a Teams message between your direct colleague and your manager. Like this, you don't have to send the same messages 3 times to 3 different people. It's just one group chat altogether.
That's a good tip, actually. I think if you're not familiar with SharePoint and you're still a student at university, it's worth just taking a look at that and sort of getting used to the sort of how that works as well. Oscar.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I mean, one positive that I found difference to working in terms of schedules. I mean, when I was a student, I was kind of all over the place in terms of when I worked. Like, I don't know, sometimes not working much in the day, then working late through the night, and then having a terrible sleep schedule and like working on the weekend and stuff like that. And being like, geez, man, I don't think I'll be able to ever do work, But it was great because then becoming to work in an organization, people worked 9 to 5. They worked normal times. And I found that much easier to then work that schedule too. And my line manager kind of encouraged, like, yes, don't work on the weekends, please don't work beyond your contracted hours, And sometimes when it came down to it, I made the choice that, okay, I really want to get this project finished. So maybe I worked a little bit more. But on the whole, that was kind of encouraged. So, I mean, that's one thing which I think is actually quite helpful and different, is that the contrast can be that there can be somewhat of a more work-life balance, and hopefully that's encouraged. And if it's not, you can still maybe create that for yourself as well too. And I don't know, I mean, I've equally had line managers who worked a lot and also outside of normal working hours. But also it's kind of like that thing of what was the expression? Do what I say, not what I do. They can also encourage you to not do that. And I would try and take that to heart in a way that I don't need to do all that stuff. I can still work in normal hours, even if you don't choose to. So yeah, I mean, have your own boundaries. I think is maybe an important thing, and that's important especially when remote working. It's much easier to lose those boundaries. So if my job is fully remote, I enjoy going to the office because it gives a stricter boundary, and it gives the chance to communicate in person. But yeah, have boundaries when at home. I think that's quite important and easier when you're working in an organization too. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, great advice. I think around because with everything. People being available so much more, it can be really easy to let that slip, and that can put additional pressure on you, especially in the early days. I think when you're getting used to a job, and it can be quite tiring when you first start a job and you're just getting used to it. Joy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I wanted to add a bit on Oscar's point in terms of, I would essentially think it's around time management and boundaries as well. I think something that really stood out to me was you really need to learn how to space your time and your workout and no longer be able to cram your assignments at the last minute or, study for an exam at the last minute. Working at your own pace is one thing, but I think when you get into the working world, you would actually realize that, a lot of things are dependent on other people's work, on your work. So actually accountability, for meeting the deadlines, being responsible, communicating if you're not being able to finish it. I think that's definitely something really important to keep in mind as well, because if you can't get it done, the project won't be able to move forward, you won't be able to complete your work, and it just spills over into other people's maybe jobs and makes things a bit difficult. So I think learning to manage the time, learning to space things out would really help as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what we're talking about here is just that sense of being kind of new and picking up on the culture and picking up on, what's the way things are done here, and that can also, as we mentioned briefly earlier, it can kind of bring about a sense of kind of being a bit of an outsider or a bit of a newcomer, and for some people that is a real sense of imposter syndrome, as it's known, that sort of sense around, being slightly unworthy of the position that you're in and kind of not quite ready for it, or being an outsider. I'm wondering if any of you have experienced that, and if you'd be happy to talk about that, and any tips that you have for handling it.
Yeah, I'll be happy to go first and share. I think definitely 100% I felt it, especially working in an industry that's, you work with a lot of older people with a lot more experience, like CEOs of companies, etc. But actually, I think as of now, I would actually see it as a good thing, having that imposter syndrome to some extent, because if you do feel that way, it means you're doing something new. Means you're doing something unfamiliar, getting out of your comfort zone. And that's really the only way to grow. Personally, that's what I feel. And you're doing something new and unfamiliar. You feel a bit terrified, you feel scared, not because you're incapable of doing it, but simply because it's unfamiliar and new, right? So leaning into that, really accepting that everybody's learning, even my bosses who are like, I don't know, directors of the APAC region, etc. They tell me all the time, right? I'm learning every single day. I just taught him how to use emoji on Zoom 2 days ago. So it's even things like that, right? I think something that really helped me is actually reframing them as people. This is a bit unconventional tip, I would think, but what helps me when I'm speaking to people and I don't really feel qualified, I'm like sharing my opinion, giving my thoughts, I kind of reframe them as, oh, this person is somebody's mom. This person is somebody's uncle who sits at like Christmas dinner and doesn't say anything or just cracks dad jokes all the time. So I think reframing that really helps me see them as people and not like some scary someone on a pedestal that, oh, I can't, talk to, etc. Because I think reframing that really helped for me. And something that my manager actually shared with me when I talked to her about this or feeling this specific way, not qualified or not as confident, sharing my thoughts. She did say that this quote that kind of stuck that said, sometimes it's not a big deal. You might think you did something, wrong or you said the wrong thing. It might not be a big deal, but it's also not ideal. So let's say you don't think you did something right, but no one is going to see it in that manner, especially when you're young, you're learning, you're really upfront. Just remain curious. And most of the time, people are more than willing to help. And like I said, the more you do it, the less nervous you will feel, the less of an imposter you would feel, honestly. And I think 3 reminders that I would like to share is number 1, you're always going to feel like this, like a steep learning curve at the start of something new. It's a requirement, right? In a sense where there's no situation that's new that you're not going to feel like I know everything. If you do, then maybe you're in the wrong room. You're not learning to that extent. I think the second point I would say is actually that everybody needs help sometimes, big or small matters. And we're human, right? Like we work really well as a team. A lot of things can't get done by yourself. So everyone needs help. And you're probably more gracious with other people asking you for help than you are on yourself asking for help. I think reframing that as well really puts things into perspective that if someone were to come and ask you a question, you'll be more than willing to share, right? And you wouldn't think that they're dumb or, oh, why are you asking me this? A waste of time, etc. I think the third one is definitely what I mentioned earlier, lean into the learning curve, accept that it's something you have to do. And the more you do it, the less unfamiliar, the less scary it would feel. And that's sort of what works for me. I would say works because it's still a work in progress. There are definitely still times where, a new project comes along, something totally out of my comfort zone. But I think keeping that mindset shift, reframing the situation will really help.
Thank you, Joy. I think that's a lovely way of expressing it, and particularly your point about seeing people as human and fallible, and everybody is still learning. Candide, I think you had something to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that imposter syndrome is bound to happen to any of us. It shows that you care about what you're currently doing and you want to learn more. So, although it feels really awkward, just embrace it. And rather than feeling overwhelmed, just try to capture what you're really struggling with and ask for help. I think imposter syndrome happens at all level, but it shows that you care about your job and what you're currently doing.
Yep, so there's very much something about, if you weren't that bothered about it or you weren't that committed, then you wouldn't be feeling this. And I think you should take it as a reassurance that that you are really engaged with what you're doing and really kind of motivated by that as well. So we've just got sort of 1 or 2 final things to cover here, and we've got a couple of questions that have been submitted as well. I wanted to ask you about your sort of professional development and what's been your experience in the workplace. I know that when you're at university, you sort of have it all planned out because that's why you're here. You're here to learn. I think there can be a bit of a sort of mind shift when you move into employment and you're here to work, but hopefully also to learn. What does that look like for you in practice, and how much sort of agency do you have over that, and how much have you needed to sort of take the initiative in that? Candide, are you able to perhaps carry on and speak about that?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak about it. I think I have a few things to share. First of all, when you graduate from Heriot-Watt, please look into what chartership you are recognized with. For instance, in supply chain management and logistics is there is a SIPS and there is CILT. So register to those, and this will give you access to network events and the latest about your environment and what's happening within that area in general. Also within the corporate world, your master or whatever degree, your bachelor, is relevant because you've learned to negotiate, you've learned to analyze stuff. So you know already that you don't know all the topics, and you can just get to learn more. And also on the professional side, for a career development, I would take it into two areas. First, I will develop a relationship with my line manager. I would put a monthly call, and I would ask a few questions when I first start in the team. I would ask what are the challenges that they're currently facing. What do you need to do in the next 3 months to feel like you're adding value? And also, what are the things that they think you can help on? And I would build a 30, 60, 90 days plan with your line manager, and just go over it constantly in the calls with your line manager. And after that, for professional growth, in my company, there is something called 70-20-10 rule. So 70% of your professional development comes from your daily job. So try to identify what you're currently working on and how it can help you develop. The other 30% are related to internal training. So see within the company what trainings are offered, and the 10% that is remaining, just spend it on any chartership that is relevant or any skills that you need to improve. I think that represents it in a nutshell. That's the quickest way I could put it down.
No, I think there's some good information there, and I would sort of reiterate. I think that's a fantastic point about, identifying any other professional qualifications that you can get. It's not something we particularly pay attention to when we're students, but actually these things can be really important in the professional world. So if there is an organisation, we would always, I think that's good advice to sort of engage with that and find out what the qualifications are. Oscar.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to echo the point that Candy made about the 70-20-10 point. I mean, I found that when I started at Heriot-Watt, my line manager encouraged me to do trainings that were offered by the university, like classes and stuff. And there was some, and they were kind of good, but I almost started to find that was kind of running away from the main work and the main learning. Like, it's easy to do loads of trainings and get all these kind of small qualifications, but how much you actually learn from putting that into practice is a different thing. And I found that the way that I learned the most was taking my development into my own hands. So when I was on a research project, I was getting research skills, data, literature reviewing, and so on. But I basically thought, how could I make this have more impact? So then it was a project on sustainability. So I ended up finding the sustainability team within Heriot-Watt University. I reached out to them and said, I'm doing this project. Could we develop some interventions from it? Could we integrate it within the university? And then it led to meeting the kind of the deputy principal. And, even tomorrow I'm now presenting as a team, we're presenting at the committee for sustainability to share the research and what we can do about it. None of that was part of my job role or even thought about from my line manager, but it came because just trying to think laterally about how can I use what I'm learning and apply it and make it myself. I did courses on impact within that, which were helpful, but again, it was doing it and just kind of figuring it out as I went. But I learned a huge amount from doing that, and skills that were not kind of necessarily part of my job role as such, but were really useful for the real world. So I guess I would say, find ways to, that 70% that you're spending your time on your job, find ways that you can grow within that, and that you can build on skills within that. And even if your line manager doesn't tell you explicitly, see if you can find other ways and that you can grow from that, or that you can use what you're learning and apply it. Because I think, yeah, you're not always going to have a structured environment to skill up, but certainly I think you can take it into your own hands to do that, and grow, within what your line manager allows you to do, and confirming that with them as well too, so you don't go do random stuff on the side that stops you from doing your main job, which I have also got in trouble for. So I would say do confirm with your line manager to confirm with them. But yeah, no, that would be what I would add to Candy's great point. Yeah.
So there's definitely something there about sort of, keeping those lines of communication open, but also, sort of thinking for yourself, and don't expect that to be perhaps laid down in a straightforward way. Chris, I think you wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, that point that Oscar made about taking initiative, that's a really good point, because sometimes your growth isn't linear, so you'll have to step out of your comfort zone to find the way for you to grow more. Sometimes you'll be at like just a step on your growth where you're sort of like stuck because you don't know which path to take forward. So being able to explore yourself in the environment that you're in, especially see where else you can help, but doesn't stray too far away from what you're supposed to do, like Oscar said. I think that taking the own initiative for your own growth, because in the end, it's you who's growing, right? You depend on people to grow, but then the growth is for yourself in the end of the day. For us at our company, especially, we have monthly reviews to see that, okay, these were the goals that you set for yourself. Have you reached them? How can you reach them? And what other goals would you set for yourself? Do you think that you've done enough in the past month, that in the way that, not that you've done enough, but you've contributed to how you wanted to contribute? And how have you progressed as well with your contributions? And how have you helped the company in a way to, like, I work in a car showroom, so in the end, it's more, my position is more, how can I take the workload of it, right? So how have we increased our productivity in the past month is what my monthly reviews would be about. So I think understanding, okay, this is my position. How do I how do I measure my own growth? How do I measure my own progress? I think understanding within yourself as well what you classify as progress and what you classify as growth, because you might be growing with a company, but then internally you might think, I'm not growing at all. And I think that was for me at some point. I did feel that way because um I learned a lot of coding as well in my university years, but right now we focus on using low code to increase productivity and reduce the time that we spend on using. I felt I feel like I'm straying far away from what I wanted to do initially. But then, of course, I took the initiative to say, of course, I move towards being able to do things for myself as well as in the company. So, is there something that I can add, something that I can do, or something on the side that I can be like that will help me with my current project? Like I've taken up a couple of courses as well as just to help with refreshing my memory, but not to feel so stuck in the workplace. So just understanding yourself and then what your growth would look like.
It's interesting because I think what you're talking about here speaks to one of our questions that we've got in the chat here, which actually kind of is looking at where you've discovered that the work is quite different to what you've learned in university, and you had to teach yourself something completely new from the ground up. Has anybody been in that situation where you've had to kind of navigate learning something from scratch because it's needed in the workplace? Yeah, Chris. Hi.
Yeah, I think I'll go ahead. Like I was mentioning how we've gone towards low code platforms. To me, it was more of a, I have all this knowledge, but then I can't fully apply it to what I want to do. But having to learn everything from the ground up, that's what you did when you started university. So surely you'll be able to do it again at the workplace. So it's not something to be scared of. I think learning in itself is a big privilege. So being able to learn as you go is really good. So in that stage, it was a little scary, but then if you look around, it's just university, there's a professor to help you. At the workplace, there is a manager to help you. There's someone where you can ask questions. learn how you did at university, and then understand it for yourself. There's a lot of trial and error that comes with the workplace that I would say learning from the ground up is not something too difficult as long as you're willing to do it yourself, right? I think it's all
Yeah,
about the mindset that you have going into it. So,
great.
yeah,
That's really reassuring. Thank you, Chris.
yeah.
The other sort of questions I think are kind of connected. It's really about, sort of building those friendship groups and connecting with people. I'm wondering if, if you have any sort of examples, anecdotes, experiences of, sort of either connecting with people through the Watt Club or through classmates that you had that was helpful to you in after you finished university and moved into work, or particular sort of ways that you built up friendship groups at work. Yeah, Candide.
In the corporate world, I would say that you never know who you're building a friendship with. It could be someone who's like a senior, but so if you're building a friendship, you still have to be mindful of where it is. So if it's in the work environment and you're catching up for a coffee, but then I would still kind of be mindful of what type of friendship I'm building. Sometimes the friendship that you're building at work can continuously be all the way to work until you leave that job and people give you their number and then you start building a friendship outside of work. Sometimes you build friendship with other colleagues that just started as well. So I would say those ones are easier because you are struggling in the same areas, or they are rather you're helping each other in different areas. And yeah, from Heriot-Watt, I think I kept in touch with people who graduated at the same time as me, and we still WhatsApp each other every other week. But that's how it goes in my area. I don't know about Oscar.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I didn't keep. I mean, during COVID, obviously things changed because I was in person with people, and then all you were completely online. So maybe that was I didn't keep in contact with so many university people at some points. But I mean, I've got one university friend who I've not WhatsApp every day, but that I do see a few times a year. But we do when we catch up, we meet for hours at a time. We go for walks and we talk about career stuff and also just life. But that's been really helpful actually because it's someone who study the same stuff, we're working in similar areas, and is able to kind of advise each other on like things that are difficult as a peer. And I think that point around having people that are different ages, I think it can be helpful sometimes to have contacts with people who are in a similar position to you, and that might have graduated with you at the same age. Because while in workplaces, I've had friends, most in workplaces many people have been 5 to 10 years older than me. Which is great, and I have friends at the time, but sometimes it's difficult to relate to people in the same career position that you are in. So on the one hand, I've certainly find it helpful, like Candy says, to have friends who are perhaps similar age to you or who you study with and stuff. Definitely, really helpful. But in the workplace too, I have great friends regardless of age. People that are 10 years older than me, 20 years older than me. Sit around and have a coffee. Yes, no problem. Maybe don't hang out like outside of work loads. Maybe I've got other friends who are good for that. But I certainly find that age is perhaps not such a big barrier in the workplace because it's your colleagues. I find that you work together. Don't need to be afraid to ask someone for a coffee to hang out and chat. I think that can be quite nice. And if you approach that maturely yourself, and don't be afraid, I think that can be fine. I think it's nice to have both inside and outside of work, and also having some separation. Some people I'm great friends with in work, but listen, I'll go bowling with someone else or something like that. So I don't really go bowling that much, but yeah, that's so yeah.
I think that's such a lovely kind of high note to end on, around the sort of importance of those building those relationships. The idea that actually most people are friendly, want to get on, but also do hold on to those Heriot-Watt connections, your student pals you can connect on LinkedIn, and also remember that there is a whole kind of resource of alumni out there that that actually want to help, as this testifies to that today, that you've all been very happy to come along and contribute. Joy, very quickly, we're slightly running over, but I'd love to hear your final comments there.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about Heriot-Watt alumni, right? Besides keeping in touch with your friends, you really never know who you will bump into, and finding common ground, like what university you graduated from, which part of the world, which campus that they attended. I've had quite a few run-ins, some with my clients, some with people working in a different office, and then we sort of start to bond over the fact that we graduated from the same university. And I guess it's really reframing it to actually talk about other things. Like I said, they're human. Not everything is going to be about work, and finding something that interests them, that interests you as well, also help you, start the initial conversation and maintain that relationship.
That's a great point, I think, to end on. There is so much here. I hope you can sort of see that, and there's so much sort of gathered together here in terms of advice and wisdom. And I will be gathering some of those thoughts together and writing a guide to go on to Target Connect based on all of your comments today. So it's been a really kind of rich source of advice. Thanks ever so much, everybody, for coming along today. We are so grateful for your thoughts, and it makes such a difference hearing it from people who have been there and done it. You'll have seen that we have another session in the series coming up on the 26th of November, when we're going to be focusing on imposter syndrome, and we've already had lots of interest in that event, so I hope you can all make it to that. Just remains for me to extend my thanks to all of our panelists, Joy, Candide, Chris and Oscar. Thank you so much for giving up time in your busy working days or your evenings. We are ever so grateful to you, and please keep in touch. I think that's everything for today. So stay connected with the Watt Club. If you're not already connected, you can find us on LinkedIn, but you can also use the QR code and keep your details up to date, because we're going to be running lots of other professional development resources. And we're going to close there. So thanks for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.